And as coaches, we can do that too, right? Like we can get caught up in a game. We can get caught up in the wins and the losses, the refs making bad calls, and we just keep reacting. But if we let ourselves stay there, bad things happen from that. And so I love that word respond, because I think our responses are intentional, under our control. And I think it comes with, our habits and our preparation, that we understand things are going to happen. And so we have to have a plan for, when the ref makes a bad call, how do I respond? When we give up an 8-0 run, how do I respond?
Welcome to the JAMODI Podcast. Today we're joined by the head men's basketball coach at New College of Florida, Andrew Wingreen. Coach Wingreen is the first ever head coach at New College, hired in May 2023 to build the program from ground up. In their first season, he led the team to a 14-15 record, a fifth-place finish in the Sun Conference, and a berth in the conference tournament. He brings 16 years of college coaching experience. Coach Wingreen has served as a head coach at Lancaster Bible College and held key roles at Stetson, Bethel, Bob Jones, Rockford, and Northland International. He is also the author of Win 1-1, a book in philosophy centered on daily excellence, and he continues to inspire athletes and organizations as a coach, teacher, and speaker. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at JAMODI Podcast.
The JAMODI Podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
Coach, man, thank you so much for giving up your time, coming on here and talking hoops with me, and definitely excited to learn more about you at New College of Florida, but then also about your book, Win 1-1, which is a really cool title. So, man, thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to our conversation.
I've had a lot of opportunities to speak to coaches in high school that have started new schools and what that's like, but I don't think I've ever talked to somebody that's done that at the college level. So if you don't mind, take me back to May 1st, 2023 and what it was like starting from scratch, but at that level.
Yeah, I mean, it was a whirlwind. It's actually still a whirlwind to this day, but yeah, it kind of was crazy. I'm kind of taking you back to kind of the Final Four time around beginning of April, was looking for some new spots and just really praying to see what God wanted for us, and wanted to, not just jump at any opportunity, but the place where we were going to make an impact and where he was going to use us to, ultimately shine a light for his glory. And kind of through a set of circumstances, God opened up the door for New College of Florida. I saw a posting for it, not on any basketball job website, but it somehow came across my Twitter feed. And, we had been in Florida for about 5 years, coaching at Stetson, and I had never heard of New College of Florida. I mean, I've been coaching a long time. I've never heard of it. So I was like, what is this place? Is it some, fake school, some school that's, but I checked it out. Saw that they were going to be joining the Sun Conference as a member of the NAIA. And so I reached out to their HR department. They connected me with the athletic director, and it moved really fast, but God just opened the door. And as we prayed through it, God just made it very clear. I want you to go there and be a shining light in a dark place. And so we went. There was a lot of craziness going on at the school with, the political climate, and with some of the things with Governor DeSantis, and just a whole lot going on here. But yeah, we had to, recruit a roster from scratch, set a schedule from scratch, no facilities, had to pretty much sell a school that didn't even have a mascot at the time. And, it was a lot, but, you kind of fast forward to today, and it's been amazing to see how much it's grown and the way we've been able to build it. And I think we're trying to do it the right way, and maybe not getting as many wins as quickly as we would like to, but we're setting the foundation the right way with the right people. And that's been really fun to be a part of.
I think roster from scratch, that's more common now than it used to be, where you'd have at the college level, you'd have more players returning. But those other factors that you brought in, no schedule or no facilities, you typically aren't taking those problems on starting out. How did you do that with, delegating with your assistant coaches, figuring out all the things that you had to get done? How did you guys do that as a staff?
Yeah, well, the crazy thing is I didn't even have a staff until probably mid-July, really like this time of year. I didn't hire my first assistant coach, and we ended up getting a couple other guys later on, like probably late July, early August. But yeah, for those first few months, it was just me trying to figure it out. And I lean heavily on a lot of my network and just relationships. And I
Yep.
think it really went to kind of show me too how important relationships are in anything, but especially in coaching. You don't realize that maybe down the road, okay, like my friends are going to help me get some games. And, thankfully we had to travel a lot. I remember we went up to Truett McConnell, Coach Ye up there gave us a game, went up to South Carolina, played Bob Jones where, I used to coach at, and, Coach Tony Miller is a great friend of mine. But, some of those guys helped us get games, but we had to travel a long ways. But yeah, we just, really, I just, try to take it day by day, and we ended up playing 24 games on the road that year and only played 5 home games, and it was crazy, but our guys bought into it. They took it as a badge of honor and said we're going to overcome this and be a part of it and buy in, and that was a lot of fun.
To that point, what was it like going into homes, talking to parents, talking to players about the possibilities of what it could be like at New College of Florida, but there being no concrete evidence at that
Yeah.
time for what you're talking about?
Yeah, thankfully we're located in Sarasota, right on the water. I think that was a big help. If we were located anywhere else, I'm not sure we could have gotten this thing off the ground, but at least we had one selling point, right? We had a great academic institution and we had a great location. But I think as far as the basketball side of things goes, it had to be built on relationships. I think they had to sense that I was genuine and I truly cared about helping them grow as men, as students, as basketball players, and we were going to give everything we had to them. And then I think we just tried to sell the fact that they got a chance to do something that not many people get to do, and that's be part of a startup, be part of something from the ground floor. And there's a lot of challenges that come with that, and I made sure to address those up front. I didn't want to hide anything, and I didn't want to sugarcoat it. Like, we addressed the inconveniences and the frustrations and the distractions that were going to be just what we had to deal with. We found the right people who wanted to buy in and they wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And it was really cool that we had some guys who maybe were in it for the wrong reasons. They ended up leaving on their own, but the guys who truly wanted to be part of this foundation and see this thing through and be able to look back, 10, 20 years from now and say, I was a part of that success story. I was a part of laying that foundation and just really trying to get people to buy into that once in a lifetime opportunity.
It's funny, you're talking about the first few things that you had mentioned with those families, and it made me think about whether at the high school or college level, let's just say a new family moves to where I live in Waco, Texas now. What would be the way that I describe our program? Would I talk about the amazing facilities that we have? The gyms, the space, the resources, or would I focus on those things that are truly more important, which is what we were going to do off the floor, the overarching theme, the mission that our program actually has? I think that's probably the message or the lesson from what you did is you focused on the things that really the only things you could control at that time. But those things really are the main thing and the most important things that sometimes we can almost glide or gloss over trying to get them to see the shiny objects that are maybe available. But I don't know. I
Yeah.
think that's what we need to focus on.
Yeah, and I think one of the best pieces of advice or wisdom I got was from Coach Richie McKay, the head coach at Liberty. I kind of called some of my mentors and just tried to, try to pick their brains. And, Coach McKay was part of a startup back when he was out west, when he was first starting coaching. And he told
Oh,
me,
wow.
he said, find the players that you can lose with. And I had to kind of ask some questions and just, like, what does that mean? What does that look like? Because I want to win. Like, I don't want to sit there and lose. But it was so powerful because, you can get players that you can win with, right? They have the talent, they have all the athleticism, the skills, and you can win with those guys. But as soon as things get hard, and we knew a startup program, political climate of the school, no facilities, we knew it was going to be hard at times. We knew there was going to be hard days. It could be a hard season. There was going to be all kinds of off the court things. And so find the guys you can lose with. And that just told me, when those hard situations do come, do I have the right guys in the room who will say, you know what, coach, like, we're ready to embrace this. We're going to be able to, move on to, the next thing. It may not work out the way we want to, but we see the bigger picture. We see the vision. We see the mission. And I just thought that was a powerful piece of advice that I've really, I took and ran with that first year, but even to this day, just finding the right guys that you put in the locker room who, yeah, you want to win games, but can you lose with them? Can you sustain a 2 or 3 or 4 game losing streak? Can you, sustain a 10-0 run and be able to bounce back from it? Because there's a certain type of person and a certain type of mentality that takes. And so we're looking for those type of players that can come in and be a part.
Do you encourage high school coaches to kind of view it the same way? We can't, for the most part, choose who comes to our school, but we do get to choose who's in the program and who gets to continue to be a part of it. Would you say that we should look at it that way as well? Guys that you can lose with, but obviously, like you said, the goal is to, on those Tuesday, Friday nights, to win. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously high school is a different animal just because you don't always have the choice that you always want, right? Like you get the kids that you get, they're in your school district, you do have a choice whether they make the team or which, JV, varsity, freshman team. So you get a little bit of choice, but I think that even if you can't fully control it and say, I'm going to pick you and not you, and maybe I have to take some guys who aren't fully bought in, I do think that it's a mentality and a mindset that any coach at any level needs to embrace and embody and just say, you know what, like we're going to instill this and we're going to teach you what this looks like. Because the truth is most kids, and I think I would put myself in this category, I didn't know what it looked like to have to overcome adversity when it came to basketball, right? Until I went through things and I had to experience it myself. I didn't always know what that looked like. And so it's not always that these kids don't want to be that person, but sometimes they don't know how to be that person. And I think it's our job as coaches to teach them and give them the toolbox and the toolkit to say, okay, like this is how we lose, right? I'm not expecting you to always react the right way, but we are going to move on from that quickly and we're going to respond the right way. We're going to be more intentional with how we overcome that. And I think that's a really powerful thing that we can all take away from those things.
Those words that you just said in that message, I think spot on. And it's really important for us to communicate that to our teams. But then it has to be followed by our actions, right? Because we can say that, and this is how we want them to handle losing. But then the moment we lose and we slam our fist into the locker and say things that we regret or throw something, then all of a sudden there's conflict between what we outlined as this is how we handle adversity, but then what I'm actually doing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's why I love those two words, react and respond, because I think emotionally and our human nature for all of us, I don't think it matters who you are, is we react. When something happens to us, we inherently react. And I think as you grow in leadership and you grow in your maturity, those reactions, you just learn how to reset them a little quicker, right? So some people react and they stay there for a long period of time. And as coaches, we can do that too, right? Like we can get caught up in a game, we can get caught up in the wins and the losses, the refs making bad calls, and we just keep reacting. But if we let ourselves stay there, bad things happen from that. And so I love that word respond, because I think our responses are intentional, under our control. And I think it comes with, our habits and our preparation, that we understand things are going to happen. And so we have to have a plan for, when the ref makes a bad call, how do I respond? When we give up an 8-0 run, how do I respond? When we lose a game at the buzzer that we probably should have won by 10, 15 points, like, how do I respond? And that's not easy to do, right? So we're all going to react, but we have to reset quickly, and then we have to have a response. And that's got to be something that we prepare and intentionally attack.
I think a message to the high school coaches also that we don't recruit our players. We can't control who's in there to start, but also to encourage us not to compromise just because of a skill or what a player can do on the floor. If they're going in an opposite direction of where we want our standards, our culture to go, they may help us win, but don't compromise for that short term or instant maybe success. I wrote down the word regret. I don't feel like I hear a lot of regret from those coaches that made the tough decision to part ways or change directions from a very talented player. They don't regret that. What coaches regret quite a bit is when they compromised and they sacrificed standards or culture of the program for what that player could do or players could do in the short term. And so I think even though we had different situations, the same thing though, we're not going to compromise on that.
Yeah.
We're not going to have that regret.
Yeah, 100%. And I love hearing Shaka Smart talk about his culture, and he uses those words. It's how we act, it's how we interact, and it's how we respond. And yeah, I think it's a trap we can all fall into to say, "Hey, we're like I can't take this dude off the floor. Like he's our best player. Like maybe he's acting a fool on the court a little bit right now, but it's sometimes hard to take guys off the floor, or it's hard to hold your best player to the same standard as a guy who maybe doesn't impact your team as much. And those are some real, like it seems so simple, right? But those are some internal battles that we all face as coaches. And I think you're right. It may be the harder decision to make in the moment, but never sacrifice what you want most for what you want in the moment. And I think we have to do a better job and just always have that long term, that big picture framework in our mind and say, okay, it might suck right now, but we're going to make this decision, and I think it's going to pay off in the long run. You're going to keep credibility with your team. You're going to have their respect, and I think ultimately your culture is going to be better for it. And most of the time, those best players, they learn a lesson too, and they grow from it. So I think it's good to make those hard decisions.
Part of a fun thing of getting to do this and getting to talk to people like Coach Miller with a quick timeout podcast. I've just learned so much from him over the years. And I think he's just one of those guys. He's growing the game and he's doing just such a great job. But talking to guys like him and like you, I get to love to learn daily habits that set you up for success because you and I get the same amount. I think it's like 84,600 seconds or something like that every day. But how you use yours and how I use mine, that's the difference. And so, what are some of those things you do daily?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I know for me as a Christian, I always need to start reading my Bible. And I think on my desk at my office every day when I come in, because I don't always do it before I leave the house, but I have some quiet time when I get into the office. And I think that's really the foundation of everything I do. And I've realized when I don't maintain that habit of just getting in the Word and having some prayer time and some quiet time with God, a lot of other things don't always line up. And so usually the days that I have more stressful days or I'm frustrated and things don't seem to be working out, it's usually when I forget to utilize that habit. But I think just being consistent, like I think that's one of the habits that I've been really trying to grow in is no matter what it is, big, small, I just want to be consistent. I want to show up the right way every day. I want to bring that attitude, that effort, that energy that elevates the room. And so for me, I think everything stems from those. And I've just been trying to set my life up in a way where, making those conscious, intentional decisions to show up the right way and be consistent. And I know it's kind of a broad answer, but those are some things that I really try and do.
I love that. And the consistency piece is huge. I like looking at that as a skill, something that it's not natural for us to have great habits and do the same thing every day. And I think that's something that I struggle with is a lot of great ideas and I get to learn something new. Like Tim Ferriss's book of Tools of Titans to me is just there's so many great daily habits in there, but it's kind of like coaching. You can't do everything. So you have to choose the things that really work for you. And as a believer myself, getting into the word every day, super important. And just for those coaches that do want to develop that habit, because I felt like this, sometimes I'm going through my reading plan, I'm trying to be more in prayer, and you don't feel anything in the moment. You don't, or even after a few days, you don't feel that peace that you're talking about. But Manawatsa, president and owner of PGC, had a great nugget. He said, it's not one quiet time that does it. It's a lifetime of quiet times that does it. And you could take that quiet time out. You could put that in as working out or reading in general, writing notes, texting or talking to people, anything that you want to do without consistency You're just not going to see it. We know that as players or as coaches, we try to tell our players that, but how often it's like we forget that as adults. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can't even count how many times where, maybe it's reading the Bible or even just reading a book where you read something, maybe it doesn't resonate with you in the moment and you're kind of like, oh, I didn't really get anything out of that today, but days later, weeks later, it comes back to your mind and you're like, this is applicable now. Or, you're reading through a passage of scripture or in a book where you have a ton of stuff highlighted or underlined and you come across something else that you skipped over the last time and it shows up. And so I think there is so much power to, like Mano said, keep showing up, keep staying in the word. Just you have to just keep doing it. And I think that's a great lesson for anything we do in basketball, workouts, whatever. Sometimes you don't see that growth. You don't always feel it right away, but the consistency and showing up and just putting the work in, it really does pay off. And it's a hard thing to figure out because sometimes it does take years and years before you see, the fruit of your labor. But it's a great lesson that I've learned and continue to learn just to keep showing up no matter how you feel that day or what the circumstances are around you.
And I think joy, in my opinion, is what gives us that staying power, that ability to keep showing up. So, joy in what you're doing, whether it's coaching, working with players, joy in working out, joy in opening the word and just opening yourself up to what God has for you that day. I think if you don't have joy for what you're doing, then you're less likely to stick through those moments or those times when it is hard. You don't feel like it's doing anything good for you. But maybe that's the trick is us. Let me ask you this question. What allows us to have joy in what we're doing or at least show up with that mentality every day?
Yeah, I think it's just knowing who we are. It's our identity because so many times we let our feelings dictate what we do next, right? Like we're angry, we're upset, we're tired, we're frustrated, whatever it is. I just let those feelings dictate how I lead my day, what I do, how I do it. And instead you flip that backwards and you say, okay, I know who I am. My identity, for me as a believer is in Jesus Christ. And that doesn't mean every day is going to be easy. That doesn't mean you're not going to have certain feelings that come across your mind. But when you know who you are and your actions are dictated by your identity as opposed to your feelings, I think now you get feelings of joy and happiness because you're acting on something much bigger than yourself. There's a deeper power and it's just like, again, we apply it to coaching. When you have an identity as a team and you know who you are, right? You're not just going into a game like, oh, let's see if this play works today. Let's see if this zone defense works today. Let's see if like you can't go into games like that. You got to have an identity and establish that as much as you can. And we've seen the teams who have an identity, right? Your Virginias with their pack line defense, your, West Virginia when they were pressing, like there was an identity. And these are the teams that find success. And so I think the same thing is applying to basketball is in our life, that if we want to feel a certain way or we want things to turn out a certain way, like to have that joy, I have to act on my identity. And I have to, you got to put some work in to really understand, like, I'm more than a basketball player. I'm more than a coach. I'm more than a husband or a father. Like, no, my identity is rooted in Jesus Christ. And because of that, I can be a great dad. I can be a great husband. I can be a great coach. I can handle these situations the way that they need to be handled. Not always going to be easy, but there's joy in that. And there's a promising, significance that comes from that.
Before you and I got on, we were talking a little bit about the Leftovers book. I'm excited to get to talk about your book throughout our talk today. Part of my story really is about identity and the danger of a sport for us as adults. It could be a relationship or our job. It also could even be with our kids, like us starting, you see that with parents all the time of, it seems like they're living through their kids and their identity is all wrapped up in their kids' success in whatever they're doing. The danger, if your identity is in something and not in someone, what if that falls apart? What if that lets you down? And who are you at that point? And I realized as a 21-year-old that when basketball was really bad, I thought, I'd grown up in a Christian household. I thought I knew where my foundation was. But then I think if you rip open my chest, the basketball was there. And that's what I was worshiping. And then all of a sudden that's bad. And I realized I am lost. I don't know who I am. And Kellen Sampson said, if you don't know where you're going, any path will take you there or get you there. I think the danger in not having an identity that's rooted in something bigger is you'll fill it with something. And the competitive spirit I had in basketball, I started to throw that into other areas of life and bad areas. And it's incredible just how quickly that can take a hold of you. And then you're thinking you're just getting some like momentary peace, just getting through time, getting through something hard. But the habits that we've talked about, it's kind of like a little tree. uh, a little tree. And when that tree is really small, you can still grab it and rip its roots out and easily. Like we need to stop those habits there. But those habits that are bad, if they grow, they can become deep roots that really are hard to stop or change. And that's where I found myself all through my 20s. But I thought a little bit too about how we can show up with joy every day and no matter what we're doing. And to me is that attitude of gratitude.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's hard to complain if you're showing gratitude. The Blue Angels there's a great documentary, and their whole theme is glad to be here. And it's not just glad to be here on the days when things are great, it's glad to be here when things are bad, when relationships are fractured, when you're tired. And so maybe those are some ideas. Sorry, coach, I just rambled for a long
No, I
time.
love that. I love that. First of all, that is a great documentary on the Blue Angels. I've seen that, and I would highly recommend anybody to watch that. I'm absolutely
For
enthralled.
team building, the way
For
that they
sure.
watch
For sure.
film and talk to each
Yep.
other, awesome.
Yeah, the communication, visualization. I would go to every Blue Angels air show if I possibly could. I love that stuff. But
Have you been to one
I
live?
have, I have, I've been to
Wow.
several.
Is it
So
awesome? I've never
yeah,
been. I wanna go now.
they're a lot of fun. I would recommend it for anybody's. But no, that's great stuff. And I think you said something before too about if you ripped your chest open, there was a basketball in there, and that hit me. I've never heard that. I've heard people say they've had a heart for basketball and all this stuff, but I've actually had 3 open heart surgeries too. And my journey with my identity was because of my heart surgeries. Like, I was a good basketball player, played my whole life, and going into high school was when I had those surgeries, and they didn't go as well as they should have, and I ended up getting basketball taken away from me. And so
Oh,
through that, that's ultimately why I got into coaching. But that process from about high school through college, there's just so much bitterness, so much anger, anxiety. Like, everybody around me could see it. I probably wasn't always a joy to be around because basketball was my identity, and I couldn't do that. So it wasn't my fault, right? It was God's fault. It was my doctor's fault. It was my parents' fault. It was my coach's fault. It was everybody's fault, right? And I had that victim mentality, and it just stole so much joy from me. I had so much bitterness in my heart, right? And so when you said that, rip my chest open, and there was a basketball there, I was like, man, that hit. And it was, kind of the same story, but it wasn't until I had two coaches in college who basically that I worked for, was a student assistant for, and they really showed me how I can make an impact through coaching and ultimately where my identity lies. And it's actually cool because the two coaches, there's one coach in the book that I wrote, and those examples are kind of part of that story. So, but no, that was really cool to hear you say that. That was neat.
so you're in your early 20s, right? And still frustrated because you weren't able to continue your career. I know it happened in high school, but
Hmm.
how quickly did it go from that frustration to wondering how can basketball still work in my life, and then being called to coach, because I do believe that coaching is a calling. What was that process like?
Yeah, I think I grew up around a lot of coaches. My aunts, my uncles, they were all high school, college coaches. And so I had coaching in my family, but it was never something where I thought I would be a coach. Like, I was the kid who thought I was going to be the basketball player and I was going to have a career as the player, right? And so
Yeah,
how
yeah.
clueless was I back then? But yeah, I think in college, I also played golf competitively in college. I played volleyball. And so I just had this competitive nature, but those sports weren't as fun for me. Like, I wanted to be around basketball, and it was a long process. But I think I don't know, it was pretty quick when I had some of these talks with these coaches, and it did open my eyes pretty quick that, you know what, I think this might be my calling. And I think God made it very apparent to me that this is what I was supposed to do. And I wouldn't say the frustrations with my heart, went away. It wasn't so much that I couldn't play, but even just fatigue and I still have to deal with some of that stuff to this day, like what my diet looks like and how I have to approach every day. Yeah, God made it very evident that, you know what, I took this away from you. And he uses that, the story about Paul, he's got a thorn in his flesh, and yet we can still, you can still be used to glorify me. And he just made that evident to me. And I'm super grateful, for my story, for my journey. It hasn't been the perfect journey, but it's been the perfect one for the story that God's writing.
Thankful for coaches that we've had in our lives, like those two guys that had such a big impact on you in the right moment. And now that you and I are older, we can kind of look back and see a little bit more of the why. It's so hard when you're in the storm to see any kind of good that could come from this or any light at the end of the tunnel. But then time goes by, and now, I mean, it's kind of like that leaf, right? That's just flowing down a little brook, and it's winding and turning, but it's still moving forward. And like, while I'm in the middle of that, it's chaotic and confusing. But man, thankful for coaches that were able to speak life into us in those moments. And even if we didn't take their advice in that moment,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Coach Mills, Coach Drew, and then my first boss really in the high school level is a friend of mine now, Coach Clarkson. I wasn't living very well, and I wasn't a good varsity assistant for him. And there were days where he should have fired me, but I'm thankful he's a believer. I think he just had a huge heart and care for me, but God put him in my life to keep me moving forward. But I'm just thankful for that, because your story, how different would that be? Maybe you would have taken a completely different path from basketball and where you are now and what you're getting to do at New College. Incredible.
Yeah, I know. And that's the older we get, we start seeing how God just has, the things that happened 10 years ago, man, like you said, if that didn't happen, would I be here now? And, the thing that I've learned is, yeah, sometimes life gets really hard. Sometimes it throws you a curveball. Sometimes you don't always understand why, but I've seen enough to know that God's in control. And, one quote that one of those coaches always told me was, look, either God is sovereign or he's not. You got to decide which one you believe. Like, if you believe he's sovereign, then, like, you just got to follow him. If you don't, then it's going to be a tough life. But time and time again, through the ups and the downs, I've seen God provide. I've seen him come through. I've seen him perform miracles. And it's just, those hard moments, I would just encourage anybody to just keep trusting, keep following him, because there is a purpose and a plan for whatever you're going through.
It's a good nugget. There's one thing that no regrets, right? Like definitely things that I wish I could have done better. I wish I would have been better for Coach Drew in his first season, which was my senior year at Baylor. After all of that stuff had happened, I wish I would have been better for him, a better leader, more authentically engaged, because I was just going through the motions. But one thing I never asked during all of that, like you said, I was angry at basketball, angry at God, angry at teammates for what they did, so many coaches, but I never asked, how can I be used in this time? And what can I learn from this time? Like, how can I be a light for you? I never asked that. And it would have been a great time. I think I could have been used in a big way. Now, I think he has used that story over the years, but later on, kind of after the fact. And so maybe that's just maybe a coach or a player or whoever is just going through something really tough. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people go through what you did, and what I went through doesn't compare at all to what you went through. But maybe they are going through something that's hard for them with their team, with their job, with a relationship. And I think instead of zooming in, like we want our players to zoom out and to see what the gym needs or what our team needs, I think we can zoom out and ask the question of, what can I learn from this, and how can I be used for his glory in this?
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Jamie Winship. He's a speaker and an author. He's a pastor out in, I think, Utah, but he talks about identity. He talks about living fearless. And he always talks about these two questions. And it's, when you pray, ask God, what do you want me to know? And what do you want me to do? And those have been life-changing questions for me, because I think, like you said, when I was younger, I wish I would have known how to just listen to God more. Like, I think so many times we pray and we tell God what we need, we want, or we don't talk to him at all, but instead just being like, all right, God, like, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to know about this situation? What do you want me to know about this person? What do you want me to know about this conversation? What do you want me to know about being the best coach I can be today? And then you just sit there and listen and, let God speak to you, write it down. And that's powerful. And then when he kind of gives you, okay, this is what I want you to know about this situation. Okay, what do you want me to do? And what actions do I need to take, right? Do I need to, have a conversation with this person? Do I need to maybe step away from this situation? Do I need to maybe eliminate this from my life? And that listening prayer of, God, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? I think is a powerful practice that I wish I would have, learned a lot earlier in my life.
Man, we've kind of mentioned your book quite a bit. Why not? Let's just dive right into it. So give me kind of a summary or what's the reason behind writing Win One One, and maybe describe to everybody like what those three words actually are.
Yeah. So I have one of the proof copies right here, Win
There it
1-1.
is.
So it's got those words, but it's a super easy framework. It's probably one that most coaches are going to say, I know that stuff, but we really try and expound on it. And the reason I wanted to start writing the book, I mean, I've started several books in my life and it's always been something I've wanted to do, but I've never sat down to lock in. But we were playing a conference game this past season up at Coastal Georgia and, just trying to get our team on the right winning track. We were 0-3 going into conference, and I thought our guys were being really resilient and we were close, played some tough teams, but we were in the locker room before the game and I was just trying to, when I do like pregame speeches, I don't know how most coaches are, but usually I don't prepare those until the guys are like out warming up. I'm sitting there in the locker room. And again, I just kind of pray and I'm like, all right, like what do the guys need today? Like, what do I need to talk about? Sometimes it's rarely anything. Sometimes it's a lot. But this day, God gave me this idea of win 1-1. And it was, all right, we have to go win the next play. We got to win the moment that's right in front of us. And so I wrote on the board, win. And I talked about that. Like, what does that look like to win every moment? And then I wrote the word one, O-N-E, on the board. And I said, we have to do this one possession at a time. So win every moment, but then we have to do it one possession at a time. And it's got to be play after play, no matter if it was a successful play, a negative play, a tough play, tough call, one possession at a time. We got to go into it with that mentality. And I said, if we do those things, we win every moment, one play at a time. At the end of the day, we'll have won. I said, we're going to come back in this locker room. And I wrote the word one on the board. And I said, we're going to celebrate. We're going to pour water on each other and we're going to have won. And it was a simple thought, but that was kind of where it stemmed from. And then, the more I talk about it and thought about it, those are very simple ideas, but the complexity behind it, there's so much, right? Like to win every moment, you got to show up the right way. Yeah, you got to show up the right way. You got to have the right habits. You got to have the right approach. To do it day after day takes discipline. There's going to be adversity. There's going to be, you have to really embody that next play mentality. And then, the idea of winning at the end, right? To have won, it's more than just the scoreboard. There's significance in the way we compound our success and the way we stack wins every day. And so I just, God just kept putting these thoughts on my heart. And it's things we talk about every day with coaches and everyone hears about it, but really tried to simplify it and kind of put it in a story form and, let middle school kids, high school kids be able to read this book and really understand it and glean from it, but also put the leadership tactics in there where a coach or a business leader can read it and say, okay, I'm going to take these and I'm going to apply them to what we do. And it's been a really fun process. As you know, writing a book is a lot more rigorous than you probably think of at first, but it's been a lot of fun and been really neat.
I think one of the fun parts I did write your story. I think you learn so much about yourself when you try to write something down and maybe it's about your life or things that have happened. And one of the things that led me, because I started writing the story when I was still struggling. And one of the things that led me out of it was writing it down and seeing really literally the ways I had screwed up. When I love those three things and the way that you wrote them down and the way that they flow. When you're talking in your book about showing up with intention, leading with your heart, building daily discipline, what are some of those things that either you talk about in the book or can help with players in kind of building those daily habits? And maybe we talked about that a little bit early on with consistency, but
Yeah, no, I think the first thing we start out talking about is the winner's approach and what that looks like to show up every day, right? That consistency you show up with every day. But in order to do that, you have to have the right attitude, the right effort, the right energy, and the right focus. And so, kind of share in story form about this high school
Yeah.
kid who struggles with that and doesn't really know how to navigate some of those things. He doesn't always show up the right way, but has a coach come into his life and helps walk him through what that winner's approach looks like. And so obviously you talk about your attitude. We all know we have to have good attitudes, but when you walk into a room, it speaks volumes, whether it's the gym with your teammates, the locker room, a boardroom where you're working with your colleagues, the office. Like as soon as you walk into that room, you're conveying something by your attitude, how hard you work. And we talk about that energy. And one thing we talk about in our program a lot is energy elevates, E squared, we call it, and we put it on t-shirts. But that's the winner's approach, in my opinion, right? The way you show up is the winner's approach. And so first of all, you have to know how to do that. And then, those habits that we establish, the championship habits, right? Let's define those a little bit deeper. It's not just oh, waking up and making my bed. It's no, like a championship habit is special. Like it's different than what everyone else does. There's a little more to it. There's a little more sacrifice. There's a little more intention. We put processes and systems in place. And I think that's stuff, right, where we have to teach our players, what does that look like? Because we all know we have to have good habits. We can't have bad habits, but sometimes we fail to really teach players and teach coaches, what does that look like? How do I set that up? We talk so much about goals, but if you want to reach your goals, you got to have a process, you got to have a system, and you got to have the habits that are going to get you there. And the only way to get to that goal is by performing those consistently and showing up with the winner's approach consistently. And so I would say consistency is that overall theme, but there's so much that, you really break it down into smaller parts that are important.
I think you nailed it with having with the need for us to teach them what the actual championship habits look like, because I find myself, and I'm sure a lot of coaches do too, getting frustrated with the lack of habits that players have. So here's the feeling is I'm frustrated with Johnny's effort, ability to show up on time, consistency with attitude. I'm frustrated with those. I think it ends there for a lot of people. I'm talking to myself. I'm frustrated, but what am I going to do about it? I think we sit there in that frustration and just hope magically that Johnny's going to figure it out. We're going to say enough things. We're going to pepper enough culture in here and there. But I think what you're asking for is a higher level of accountability from us and really a detailed plan that I don't know if I'm always that good with sharing that with players. But what I don't want to do is be the frustrated coach that the kid doesn't even know I'm frustrated about it. He doesn't even know I'm mad, but I'm mad and I'm just basing my game on hope, which good players don't do, that he's going to figure it out.
Yeah, I think, it's one thing I always try and remind myself is one, most kids don't even know that they're being like that. Like, very rarely is there just an intention where I'm going to show up and I'm just not going to do things the right way. Like, we all want to win, right? I don't think anybody comes into the locker room or into your team like with a loser's mentality. Like, I don't want to win. I don't care. Like, everybody wants to win, but not everybody knows how. And so as a coach, I have to remind myself, okay, it's not necessarily that he's intentionally being a punk, right? Like he may be going through something at his home with a relationship, with his classes, with a health issue, just struggling with mental clarity or confidence. Like, so my job as a coach is, I got to get in there and I got to ask those questions. And that's something where as coaches, we don't always like going there, right? Like we would rather blow the whistle, talk about plays, teach on the floor. Maybe we'll bring a kid into the office, do a film session and talk to him a little bit about what he's doing right, what he's doing wrong, what he needs to do better with. And we don't always like to address the heart. We don't always like to address where this is coming from. But I think it's important for us to have those difficult conversations and be willing to ask the tough questions like, dude, like, why are you acting like this? Is there something going on? And we have to go for the gold and we can't just settle like, nah, coach, I'm good. I'm fine. Like, okay, I guess we'll move on. Like, no, I got to I got
Got
to
it.
keep asking. And it's not that we're a pest. Like, I think we need to use common sense and know, okay, like, I got to revisit that another time. Like, you're not sitting there just trying to
Yeah.
pry information out of kids, but you got to be conscious and intentional with it and like keep it in the back of your mind. Like, okay, like, there's definitely something going on there. Like, I got to find another way to revisit this. I got to find another way to connect with this kid. I got to find another way to really get beneath the skin and see what's happening because that heart set is so important. And if it's not right, I mean, they can't perform on the court either. And I think what, like I said at the beginning, what every player wants to do is they want to be good, they want to perform, they want to win, but we have to help them see what leads to winning.
And I think that meeting that you're talking about, when you see a change, you see a negative behavior that we'd like to help with, in my opinion, that can't be your first meeting. Like, that can't be the first time that you've had that one-on-one, and it's only about that. If we want
Mhm.
the office to be a place where players enjoy coming, where they're not dreading it, where it's not like you're going to the principal's office where I'm only here because I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
If we don't want that type of relationship or feel, then there has to be already, and everything you've talked about, it takes time. There has to be time invested in those relationships. And one of the best things that I've borrowed is from a coach, Tyron Lee, in the Dallas Fort Worth area. He called them 10-minute meetings. And he, 6 to 8 times a year, he would have 10-minute meetings with players. They're scheduled. And I've been doing it for years now. I use the Volunteer Link app. I just create the times when I can do it. I send the link out and they choose the time that works best for them. But the first 5 minutes of the 10-minute meeting, I get to ask questions. And then the second 10 minutes or 5 minutes, they ask questions and nothing's off limits. And I typically start off with, who's your favorite basketball player? Who's your favorite sports hero? And I can't remember. I think it was Kevin Eastman was the one who said, ask them who their favorite sports heroes are, because then you can use that sports hero to deliver messages to your player.
Mhm.
Because you can probably find a quote that you want that player to know or a message, but that player's already said it and it can work. But anyway, man, coach, after doing those meetings and getting their guard down, getting to know them as a person, like you said, knowing their heart, then when you bring them in for that tough talk, the necessary talk, like you said, go for the gold on it. I think the doors are open for you to do that rather than this is the first time we're really having this and it's a negative thing.
Yeah, you 100% got to make the deposits and everything that we do as leaders, I don't care what profession it is, you have to make people the priority and you have to build those strong relationships because like you said, when those tough talks have to happen, if you don't have those deposits, like it's really hard to make withdrawals. And if you try to kind of pick at that stuff without showing that you love them, showing that you care for them, showing that you have their best interests in mind. First of all, they're just going to be like, I don't want to listen to you. Then even if they want to listen to you, like what kind of credibility, what kind of respect does that handle? And so I do think that's so crucial is to make sure that we're building those relationships. It's simple stuff like you said, like even just touches. We tell our staff every day, like you got to go touch every player. Like ask them how their day's going, like see what's going on, ask them about their family, ask them about their girlfriend, ask whatever it might be. Like just every day, like you got to touch every player. And we like to have deeper conversations with guys, and we know we can't do that every day, but there never should be a day where somebody doesn't feel loved and they don't feel like coach doesn't see me or coach doesn't care about me, or yeah, I just showed up and never even got to talk to one of the coaches. Like there's too many programs I've seen or heard about, even guys on our team who have transferred in where they're just like, I never got to talk to coach. Like he didn't care about me. He never asked me how I was doing. He didn't, and that kids aren't stupid. Like they want to feel that, and they can act as tough as they want or as cool as they want, but like every single person needs to feel loved. They got to feel like they're seen and they're valued. And so if we don't do that as coaches, those hard conversations rarely ever end well.
Great idea of getting positive touch with every player. And I think another step or is connected to that is everybody should hear their name.
Yeah.
Like every player should hear their name one time. Because if that's not intentional, if that's not a goal that we're trying to achieve, it is so easy for us to only talk to our best players or our starters or the varsity guys. And so with the touches, I think those names, that's a huge step. You had a great point about players not being very self-aware, knowing that they're even coming across that way or that them showing up late matters that much. But then you took it to another place that I love is coaches having self-awareness. TJ Rosine said self-awareness is a superpower. And I think there's been times in my life where I don't have that superpower or I haven't activated it, but you nailed it with not being annoying about our reminders or things. Man, can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, first of all, I love that you've already mentioned Mano Watsa and TJ Rosine. I absolutely love those PGC guys.
Good guys.
They're some of the best leaders and culture guys that I've ever gotten to know and meet. So I love that. But yeah, I think if we're asking our players to do something, and I think I've seen too many coaches do this too, right? Like we want them to have the tough conversations or do all the work. But if I'm not willing to do that myself, I think that screams volumes of like who I am as a person, right? And so I'm a firm believer that we should never ask our players or our coaching staff to do anything that we're not willing to do ourselves. And I think if we do, you talked about that annoyance and not being self-aware, like that. I know when that's happened to me, when I've been asked to do things and I'm like, well, my leader is not doing that. My boss is not doing that. Like, to me, that just says you're a fake, you're a fraud. Like, and I don't respect that, right? And I've been around people like that. And so I don't ever want to be that person. And so I think it's really important for us to have that self-awareness of, be careful what you're even asking of the people who follow you, the people who are under you, because if you can't lead by example and you can't set the tone yourself, they may not lead into it, but they're talking about it behind the scenes. Like it's something that's crossing their mind. And again, I think credibility is so crucial as a leader. And that's a small way that, well, not really a small way. It's a big way that we can get that credibility.
I think a lot of players, you mentioned the things that players, most of them like to do or they want to do. Most of them want to win. I think most of them want to be a part of something special. I think most players don't like to be embarrassed.
Yeah.
Especially in today's society. Like a coach just maybe back when you and I were younger, the way they used to hammer us, right? Like I think the way that approach, I don't know if it works as well anymore, but the idea of us having the self-awareness not to embarrass somebody. What I mean by that is if there's a habit or something that we want to change in somebody that they might not even realize, instead of addressing that out loud to everybody, nice and quiet, arm around, whispering that criticism or that thing that we want them to improve or be aware of. I hate to say it, but my inclination is I see it and I just throw it out there for everybody to hear, hoping that that makes a change. I think sometimes that message, but may just be more because it's embarrassing them, calling them out in front of everybody. I don't know if that gets the result that we really want. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I definitely think that can be counterproductive, and it kind of goes back to that reaction, right? Like I think as coaches, sometimes we think that's maybe going to do the trick, or we're so mad in the moment and we say something that we maybe don't mean or we didn't think through, and that comes with experience. And again, I think what's most important is that if you do, because I think we've all done it, right? We've all called somebody out, we've embarrassed them, we've probably said too much. I think the best leaders that I've been around and where I've had the most respect for people is when they own it, right? Like it's not so much that they did that, but if they just act like it's okay and like don't ever come back and be like, hey, I was wrong. But those guys who are like, you know what, yesterday I said this in front of the team and I know I embarrassed so-and-so. And I just want you guys to know that that's not the person I want to be. That's not how I want to coach. And I don't think that was the right way. And so I don't think there's any harm in having some of that meekness and apologizing in front of your team, because I think when you own something as a leader, man, like I just know as a follower, people who I've been around and they own it, I'm like, okay, like this dude's the real deal. And like, yeah, he messed up, but hey, more respect for that guy now because he knows he's not perfect, and now we can actually connect in that. And I think that's powerful. So taking ownership as a coach, it's not just sweeping it under the rug or trying to avoid confrontation. It's just meeting it head on and saying, I was wrong. Like, let's improve. Will you guys forgive me? And we want that from our team, right? Like if we have a team full of guys who can, and I like to use the word call up, not call out. So it's so easy for us to call out people, but like, let's call them up to something greater. And if we do get called out for something, let's not take offense to it, but let's realize, hey, my teammate or my coach has my best interest in mind. And, if you have guys who are humble enough to say, I was wrong, man, like that's how you form a brotherhood. And that's how you form a healthy family, right? Not just a family, but a healthy family.
Next part is that you said acknowledge it, own it, but then we got to learn from it too.
Yep.
Because the same way that we don't want our players repeating mistakes over and over, Coach, at what point does it start to fall on deaf ears when, hey, that's my fault. That's not what I want to do. And the
Yeah.
next day, we're doing that again. So there has to be more to it.
100%. Yeah, I think if you just keep doing the same thing over and over, it loses its luster. And so I'm with you 100% that, with that forgiveness, it's just like in our Christian walk, right? Like we're all going to sin and we can ask for forgiveness and God forgives us. But if we just keep sinning and keep doing it, it's like, what are we doing, right? Like that's not why. We don't do it so we can sin. It's because we have so much grace and we should be thankful for that. And we should learn from it and understand like, man, because someone's showing me forgiveness, I need to be better for that.
Yeah, John MacArthur, who I think it just went into the hospital, my wife said, and doesn't look like he's doing it. He's 86 years old and one of the best pastors of the last 50 years. But he made a comment about that of like assurance. How do we know that what we believe is real or that it's really working through us is how we deal with sin? It's not that we're going to be sinless, but we're going to sin less. And when we do sin, there is this hatred, this disdain for the sin that we committed. And even though we are forgiven and we have grace, the goal is for us to not do that again.
Mm-hmm.
And you nailed it. So are we really saved if we're continuously running? I'm sorry, running back to it. I'm sorry, running back to it. I'm sorry. That's a dangerous slope, a dangerous path.
Yeah.
I don't know how that really connects to coaching, but except for like we talked about we acknowledge something and then making sure that we're not repeating that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I mean, they know you by your fruit. And I think that is related to Christianity. It's related to coaching that, no one's expecting perfection, but there is this idea of I got to get better. I have to be better. And people see that.
We've talked a lot about the culture that you've created, your daily habits, and then confidence. Confidence is one of those things that high school, college players alike struggle with, and it can rise and fall. What are some of the things you do to help them with their confidence?
Yeah, I mean, I think, a lot goes back to that identity piece we talked about. It's knowing who you are. It's knowing that, okay, if I miss this shot or if I'm in a slump, like that doesn't define you. Again, not everyone is in the same place. Not everybody knows what their identity is per se. And so you can't always just fall on that. You got to have some different ways. But I think for me, when I try and convey confidence, like I want my guys to know I believe in them. And I try and say that as much as possible, right? Like, so we have a shooter I know he's a great shooter and maybe he's struggling. Like I always just try and say things like, next shot's always going in. Believe it. The next one's going in every single time. Next one's going in. And like, I try and speak that life into him. And I'm just using this as an example, but eventually like they start hitting shots and then hype them up a little bit. Like, confidence is so much as what we believe about ourselves. And if I know somebody else believes in me, that goes a long way. And maybe that's just how I'm wired. Like one of my love languages is affirmation. And so when people tell me I'm doing a good job or they believe in me or like, you got this, man, like that just does something for me. It really makes me want to be better. And so, what gets praised gets repeated. And so I try and catch people doing well. It's really easy for us as coaches to focus on the negative, to focus on the mistakes. And if we just keep harping on those things nonstop, that can be draining. And that can, we talked about energy elevating. that really deflates the energy in the room. And so try and catch people winning, try and catch people doing well. So I got a shooter who's struggling. Yeah, I'm hyping him up. But now when I see him getting his feet right, I see him coming off a screen and like he hits a shot, like I'm going to make a point to celebrate that in front of the team. And, I might even go above and beyond and just kind of be goofy and make it a big deal. And you see these smiles cross their faces. And I feel like that boosts confidence. So for me, it's just leading with positivity. It's leading with love. That's not to say we don't ever call out the mistakes. We have to fix those, but it's really making more of a point to praise that good stuff that's going on. And I see the confidence is contagious. So when one guy starts feeling it, they start doing that for somebody else. And eventually it's got this snowball effect. And it's really fun to watch when that happens.
I think that's hard to do what you're talking about because naturally, if I'm in a gym with 16 to 20 of my players doing skill work, my eyes are finding mistakes. They're finding things that aren't right. I think you're almost talking about putting on like a different sets of lens, viewing it in a different way. Coach, how do you get there? How do you get to where you're trying to find and you're celebrating the good things? And that doesn't mean you're just letting go of all of the negative or things that could be improved. But how do you make that shift?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think since I've been a head coach, I mean, I was a head coach a couple years ago too, but these last 2 years at New College, I think I've had a different approach, right? I've mentioned this a few times, but that identity piece, like knowing who I am, and I think I've had to kind of address some fear in my life of, what are some of my fears as a coach? Like I fear losing, like I fear not being good enough. I fear being an imposter, like doing a podcast with somebody and like having all this wisdom, like who's going to listen to me, right? Like I struggle with these.
They only knew how much I second guess myself every day.
Yeah. So there's all these fears. And I think when I, growing into coaching and maturing in coaching, I think when I focus on the negative things, like I see all the missed shots, the missed layups, the turnovers, the missed defensive assignments, the missed box outs, like I've really kind of determined like that's a lot of fear. Like it's not so much that I'm mad about the mistake, but I'm mad like that's going to make me look bad as a coach. Like that's going to make our team look bad as a coach. And so like these last 2 years, like I think stepping into my identity and knowing like, okay, like this is bigger than basketball. Like it's about the people in this room. It's about loving these guys. It's about serving these guys. And it's about competing for something bigger, not necessarily against something. And so I think that's allowed me to, like you said, put a different lens on and just kind of see things from a different perspective and say, okay, like, yeah, we're going to have to address the negative, but I just want to be so focused on what we're doing right, like what we're doing that's going to take us to the next level. Because it's been proven, like I've seen it, we focus on the positive aspects of it. And that's, it's not just like being positive all the time. I haven't really thought through this, but it's like not being positive all the time, but just calling out those good things. And so I'm searching for people doing the right thing. Like, if our guys walk into the gym the right way and I see them, getting laced up right away, they're out there getting extra shots up. And then I see some guys over there still on their phones, scrolling TikTok or whatever, and maybe just kind of being a little lazy, getting it ready for practice. Like, I'm not going to sit there and get ticked off at those guys getting up, getting ready for practice slowly, but I'm really going to praise and affirm those guys who are doing it the right way. And I just keep trying to call them up, call these guys up to something bigger. And so I've made it a point just to focus on what guys are doing well. And it's hard because I'm naturally wired as an optimist and a negative person. And so I think I gravitate towards that stuff initially, but just got to make that conscious shift to say, no, like we're going to call people up to something bigger and greater.
Thank you for saying the things that I feel like so many coaches really feel. I think that those fears that you talked about, those are real.
Yeah.
I know I've felt them in the past. Shawnee Harley, Canadian Olympic women's coach for 20 years, has a program called Winning Matters. I think you'd really enjoy it. And her YouTube channel, everything she does is awesome. I did this hoops talk with her years ago and felt like it was a therapy session that I was able to have for free with her. But she really addressed that fear because there's some things that I felt like I wanted to be or wanted to do as a coach, but something was holding me back, and it was fear of losing. It was fear of not looking like I know what I'm doing. And so all of that's real. And I thought about I have tested that theory that you talked about with saying the positive thing instead of calling out the other side. At PGC, I was able to direct for them for 5 years, a lot of sessions in the summer, and I can't remember, it's probably Chad Sanjay or somebody that taught me this because he's good with all this stuff, but it was in shape shooting. That's just 6 baskets, a bunch of lines at each basket, and they're just doing a shooting drill. Well, if hustle was one of the layers of shape that we were talking about that day, the goal would be to find people hustling, and it never failed. When I had the microphone and I said, "Man, Johnny, way to hustle back to line. That's awesome." I would see others go from a walk to a jog because they heard that, and Mono would say more is caught than taught.
Yeah.
So I think you nailed it, man, with that doesn't mean you're not addressing the negative things. You're just doing it in a positive
Yeah.
way, and it's possible.
Yeah, 100%. No, I think I love that idea, more is caught than taught, because they're going to, kids are going to see coaches alike, right? I see people doing things the right way, and I see them, okay, like that's helping them. That's getting the attention of the coach. Like, I'm going to do that the right way instead of, and again, I think the other thing too is when we start addressing all the negative things going on, all that we're doing in those situations is not only does it not help, but now we're instilling the fear that we have, we're instilling that into our players. Like, oh shoot, like I don't want coach to be mad at me, or like, man, like what's coach going to be feeling today? Like, is he going to be all pissed off, or is he going to be like, what's he going to like? And so I think not only is it not the great way to lead, but now we're just instilling that fear into our team. And again, that's a negative snowball effect.
Let me ask you this question. Would you, as a player, want to play for you now as a coach?
I ask myself that a lot. And while I do feel like I do a decent job, I know that there's a lot of things that I do where I have to hold myself accountable, and I'm like, man, like if I treated myself that way, I don't think I would like that. Or if I wasn't, if I didn't get as involved with this certain thing, or if I didn't show up to this, like I wouldn't like that if my coach didn't do that. And so I've definitely had moments where I've had those thoughts, and I'm like, I need to be better because I wouldn't like playing for me, or I wouldn't like being around me, or I wouldn't respect myself as much, right? So
Mm.
no, I think that's a great thing that we have to do as coaches, is having that honest feedback, and like, yeah, really saying, okay, if I did that to myself, or if a coach did that to my kid, how would I feel about that? That's actually probably the one I go to more, is like if I acted that way, or if a coach acted that way to my kid, my daughter,
Yeah.
or my son, right? Like, how would I like that? And I'm like, I probably wouldn't appreciate that, or like, I have to ask those questions, and it's tough to assess yourself that way, but I think we have to be honest. And I think also we have to invite that feedback. We have to invite that correction from our staff, or from our spouses, or I honestly ask our team a lot. I ask our players, like, what do I need to do better? What do you appreciate about my coaching?
Yeah.
What do you think I need to change? What would you like to see me do more of? And I do those type of assessments, multiple times a year. I actually just sent a text out. Man, it was probably last week. I sent all my guys like 3 questions about some about our program and some about our staff and how we're doing things, and just wanted their honest opinions and honest feedback. And so it's not always fun to get that feedback, but I think it's necessary. And again, it creates this trust and this collaboration that, hey, like we're all a part of this, and coach cares, and he respects me and values my opinion on stuff.
Really co-creators of the culture, then we have to ask them those questions. I love what you just brought up. That's one of my favorite 5-minute or 10-minute meeting questions to ask them is, how can I be the best for you? How
Mhm.
can I help you to be your very, very best? When you ask that, it's how else are you really going to be able to measure the effect you're having on them? And especially if you've already created a feeling of, I'm allowed to tell them the truth, and it's not going to come back to bite me at practice.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt me in playing time. Oh, you don't think I'm being this? Here, I'll show you.
Mhm.
Like that's not going to help. But man, those questions are huge. And I think without realizing it, we almost forget what it was like to play and how we felt on those days where, hey, how's coach today? What's he like today? Which one are we getting? Man, he didn't even look at us after the game. We forget what that feels like. And then that's where that question of what you want to play for you has to be asked. And you nailed it. Sorry for rambling again, but last thing is you have to have people around you that care enough to hold you accountable and tell you the truth. And mine is my lovely bride, Jana. She does our book. Or she at Faith, my last school, she did our book. And there was one time where I was just yelling a kid's name and making a face. And she said after the game, Matt, your face. And just like that. And it was enough for me to be like, oh man, it had to be really bad. And it goes back to your question is, man, that kid's parent was across the gym and seeing me look at their kid that way. How did that make them feel?
Yeah.
I think if you don't care about that, then I don't know. I don't know what that makes you, but maybe not transformational, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you got to be in it for the right reasons. And again, it's not saying that we all mess up, right? We all, but
We'll fail.
if it does,
Yes, we'll fail.
if it doesn't mean something to you, and you, like we said earlier, you don't go fix it and learn from it and grow from it. Like, yeah, I don't think you're trying to be a transformational coach. I think you're just in it to get the wins, and you're using people at that moment. And I would say most coaches want to do it for the right reason, right? Like, there's very few who I think are just out there to rip on kids. But yeah, it's important. And I love, hearing how your wife, called you out on that stuff. It stings even
Your
worse.
face.
But man, it's how important is it to
Yeah.
have an amazing spouse behind you and alongside you for these crazy adventures.
So on that note, you start a new program and you're building it from scratch. How did you balance family life with your job? Because I got to imagine that's one area that we can't fail.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just trying to have them involved as much as I can.
Yeah.
My daughters love being at the gym. They love coming to the office. My wife, anytime we can have the guys over to the house, or she can make some dessert or food for them. I mean, she just absolutely loves it. And so we just try and make it one big family. And I think if we try and separate, okay, I have to go be coach now, and then I have to come home and be dad and husband, like it's really hard to create a healthy balance. And so I think the best way is just let's do this together. And it doesn't always run that smoothly with some families. Like, I get that, right? It's not for everybody, but for us, I'm so thankful to have the people in my family who I do, and we do this together. My daughters love to come to practice and blow the whistle and do the scoreboard, and Julie loves to show up and just give the guys hugs, ask them about their moms and dads and girlfriends, and we just try and be one big family. And we just try and make it about more than basketball. Like, it's not something where we're constantly, okay, all we do is talk about basketball, or the only time we see the guys is at games. Like, no, Julie will come hang out at the office, or she'll go walk around campus, or just trying to have the guys over for lunches or dinners. And I know a lot of coaches do these things, but I think when you just make it a part of who you are, and this is our life, there's not really a balance that needs to happen. It's just, this is who we are, and this is what we do.
I think it's a trick question.
Yeah.
I don't mean it to be. I didn't mean it to be, but Mike Neighbors was the one that was like, don't try. Don't try to balance it. You're not going to do it. It's not going to, you're going to fail. And so his idea was bring them together. Don't try to keep them separate.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think about one of my kind of, I would say, friends, coaching mentors around this area, coaches at Highland Park. And he has in Dallas, and he has when he pulls into his garage, he has a sign that's right up above the door, and he sees it every time, and he says, "Don't fail at the job that only you can do." And I think you nailed it on bringing it together. But one place we can't compromise, and I'm saying this as probably not somebody that's always done that really well, but we can't fail at home.
Yeah.
And if there's ever there's ever has to be a choice, between the two, man, we gotta make the right choice.
100%. I mean, it's so easy to be replaced as a coach. I mean, I could get fired or quit tomorrow, and New College would have a new basketball coach that probably could be better than me, could probably do just as good, if not better, right? And we're just, anything you do, you're replaceable, but you're not replaceable in your home. You're not replaceable as a dad, as a husband. And so I think, again, just always keeping that perspective to not let basketball consume us, but just, if I do have to pick one or the other, it's got to be family. It's got to be, my job where I can't be replaced at.
Before I get you out of here, this is the speed round. These are going to be quick questions. First thing that pops in your head,
All right.
just blurt it right out. You ready?
Sounds good.
All right. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Mint chocolate chip.
Same. That's good. Greatest shooter of all time?
I'm going to have to go with Steph Curry.
Hey, Coach, we're 2 for 2 here. We're 2 for 2 being you.
Love it.
Do you stand up or sit down more during games?
I do not sit down at all. I'm standing the entire time. I'll get into some crouches. But I don't sit.
Do crouches count?
Yep.
Man, I'm worried about getting in the crouch one time and just my lower back just like popping in the middle of the game. And
yeah.
So I got to stay away from those deep anyway. Top 3 dinner guests, any time period.
Well, I would say Jesus, Michael Jordan.
Can we take him off the table? Let's take him off the table. Yeah.
Michael Jordan, because he is the greatest basketball player of all time. I'm going to say Tiger Woods. I don't know why, just because I think I loved watching him play growing up. And then
we'll talk about those two personalities as far as being driven and excellent and winning. Golly, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, man, a third one. That's tough. Shoot, let's go with. Man, you put me on the spot for this one.
I'll tell you a guy that you already said his name. That would be really interesting. Would be Paul.
That would be. Yeah. All right, we'll go.
I don't want to give you one.
We'll go with Paul. I think I would love to pick his brand. Any of the disciples, really, too. I would take any of the disciples and would love to see what it was like following Jesus.
The radical change that they all had. Incredible.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The best basketball movie of all time.
Hoosiers. Yeah.
Do you text with 1 thumb or 2?
It's a great question. I'm a 2 thumbs. I had to get the phone up to see what it was like. 2.
I'm working on it. Still 1. I'm in Texas where we don't have a shot clock. Okay, in high school. So for high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
100% you need to have a shot clock. I think Florida is starting a shot clock, which is great, but my home state of Wisconsin, they just again said, no, we're not going to do a shot clock. And I think it's absolutely crazy. Kids are not ready for the college game. I think it makes the game more enjoyable. And there's nothing worse than watching a team sit in a 2-3 zone for 4 straight minutes to dribble the ball out. Like, it's just, nobody wants to see that. So yes, 100%, everyone should have a shot clock.
Yep. I think the college readiness thing, I get that completely. Definitely understand not wanting to watch that boring game. But I think you nailed the other part that I think should be a part of the conversation. Let's make this fun. Let's make it entertaining to watch. I don't think that's ever when they're listing the reasons why. I don't think that ever makes the list, but it should.
Yeah. I mean, especially in high school. I mean, I remember being in high school and there was just nothing better than showing up to like the football games or like you want the energy. And I feel like you get a bunch of kids, a student section at a basketball game and it's up and down and they're scoring points and like, you're just making it a great experience for your entire student body. So
do players sit the rest of the first half with 2 fouls?
No. Nope. I think Nate Oates was the guy who really showed the analytics on that. But even before I heard that, I just never understood why, because I didn't have the analytics, but just my common sense always said it's very rare that people foul out. And there may be some players who are more prone to it that you need to be careful with, but the chances of them fouling out are slim to none. It just rarely happens. And so why not let them keep playing, especially if they're in a rhythm or, feeling it and your team's playing well. Like, no, let them play. Now, 3 fouls, yeah, you got to probably sit them the rest of the half. But no, 2 fouls, for the most part, letting the guys play.
Favorite holiday?
I love Christmas. Just something special about it.
What book would you give someone?
giving them this. I'm going to give them this book.
That's right.
But before that one of my favorite books has been In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day by Mark Batterson. So if you haven't read that one, I highly recommend it. Just a really good
What's
story.
it again?
In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day.
That's a first.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Right there. Okay. Favorite place to travel?
So I actually get to go there this week, but Michigan, my in-laws have some land up near Traverse City, and so we've always kind of gone up there to hang out, and we actually get to leave this week for a little vacation, and I'm more excited than I've ever been.
That's awesome. We have two more. You've already answered the last one, which is in basketball, who's the GOAT? You already answered that.
Yeah.
So last one, if this was your last year coaching, what would you do more of?
I think I would try and make it more about everybody else. Like, it's so easy, even if we're trying not to, it just can be about ourselves so much. And I think I would just try and do everything I could to love people more, serve people more, and just make it about everybody else. Try and give them the credit, give them the opportunities, and just really not even make basketball the focal point, but just, hey, I love you, man. Like, let's go do this.
Coach, man, this was really enjoyable. Love getting to know you more and learn a little bit about how you opened New College and all the things that you did culture-wise there, but also about your book and your story. Just really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. You do a heck of a job with your podcast. Always enjoy listening to it and all your guests. So thanks for having me on, and appreciate you so much.
And I want to hear a little bit about where we can find the book, because I'll be getting it for sure. What's the best place? And then if anybody has questions about, other things that you do, and maybe we didn't get an X's and O's at all, which is pretty normal for this, but what are some ways to get the book and then maybe contact you if they're interested?
Yeah, so the book will release on August 12th, and it will be on Amazon. And then most likely, I'm still trying to work through this, but most likely be on like Barnes and Noble on the internet.com. So anywhere you can get books for that, but on Amazon. And then if people want to connect with me or have questions, I'm pretty accessible on social media, especially Twitter. So Coach Wingreen is my handle. And yeah, definitely love to connect with people and just build relationships through.
Awesome, Coach. Well, I can't wait to read the book and just continue this relationship. Really appreciate you, and I'm rooting for you in the future. Thanks again, man.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.